Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Welcome audience to Talking Deen podcast number 13. I'm your host Majid, and today I have my co-host Brother Rash and our special guest Brother Ishti.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
How's it going, brothers?
Alhamdulillah, really good.
You liking the decor?
I'm liking it very much.
Beautiful.
You must have destroyed the last studio, which is why we're in a different one again.
Yeah, subhanAllah. You know what it was? The last episode was on fire, literally. So, inshallah. But, we're going to chop and change and inshallah, keep our audience, especially those who are watching, keep them guessing.
Yeah.
But okay, inshallah. So, today's topic is an interesting one. Okay, and when I actually thought about this topic was when I came across, there's a boxing match that's going to happen between KSI and a guy called Logan Paul. Now I'm a boxing enthusiast. I like boxing. So when you see something like this, it's like it's a bit of a joke from my point of view. But what we have to understand is why these guys have so much following, and the fact that almost 1 million people actually streamed their press conference is because that these people are seen as role models, okay? Because they're YouTubers, and we know that YouTubers are big at the moment, yeah? Whether it's,
PewDiePie?
PewDiePie.
Yeah,
okay.
He's the most famous.
Okay, never heard of PewDiePie. I've heard of Porcupine, but there's also like Ryan's Toy Story and stuff like this. But anyway, so what we want to do today...
Your kids will tell you who are popular, that's the thing. The kids just, and they always drop some names and you're like, what go on here?
But that's why you'll have a lot of kids even streaming into it, and it's bad absolutely. Because these guys are going to be effing and blinding. I didn't watch it, but they will be doing that. And a lot of youngsters are going to be interested.
But that's the point, isn't it? And that's what they've noticed. It's a lot of youngsters in these audiences. If you watch boxing matches, it's 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds. But KSI and Logan Paul, who is it? 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds. It's that new generation. It's that new interest. And that's why it's really, really important.
So that's why, me and Rash were strategizing and planning what we're going to do today. And what we thought is we want to speak about role models, because this is something which is really important. Because at the end of the day, you got to understand that these Muslims are not immune to these types of role models. So something which we need to speak about because it directly affects the Ummah. And like Ishi made the point there, is affecting the younger generation. And the younger generation are actually far more important and actually more vulnerable to these type of ideas. So inshallah, let's make a start. First question I have then for you guys, okay, is why do you think society needs role models?
Without getting too philosophical, is what's important to understand is as human beings, Allah created us in our fitrah with the need to revere something, that like reverence instinct, this, the religiosity instinct. And I know it's getting quite deep straight away, but just very quickly, it's just this idea as human beings, we look up to things.
Yeah.
And naturally, as Muslims, that causes us to aspire towards finding the truth, satisfying our instinct so that, we come to the conclusion that there's a creator. But actually, that reverence instinct can manifest in lots of ways. Yeah, and what sometimes happens, it's natural, especially the younger you are, is to look up to people in the same way as, when we're really small, we look up to our parents. And then we get older and we look up to, if we have like siblings, we might look up to them, or we might look up to someone on the TV. That is a natural state of affairs. So that's why in any society, there are role models that normally get promoted or are doing something that people are interested in. So the thing is, you get those role models, and it's natural for any human being, be it young or old, to almost kind of look up to someone. And that has an effect on society. And I think, like you said, in the question as well you're asking, is that those role models actually have a massive impact on people's thinking in those societies.
So what sort of, what's the difference? What would be the result in a society where, what result does good role models produce, and what sort of results do bad role models produce in a society?
What I would say to you is, I remember being asked this exact question when I was 16-year-old, actually 15-year-old when I was a child, and they was, saying, who's your role model? Who do you look up to? And the question they're really asking me is, who do you want to be? Who do you want to aim to be? Who do you want to emulate? And they want you to find out about this person and see what led them up that path. And the whole point of a role model is to have the ideal. So you work up to something, so you copy the actions, you emulate them, and you almost fast track yourself to success. And it's what they view as success. And that's the whole purpose of that role model.
So you get that thing, don't you? Because like at schools are trying to teach you one type of role model, because they're trying to show you, like someone who might like scientists and people who have had an effect on history and all of these. So schools are trying to give you like the academic side, but then obviously in your personal life, your role models are like your football players or your kind of people on television, your celebrities. So actually, you're almost getting pulled in a couple of different directions from a very young age.
So I think Ishi made a point earlier, and it's true that for children, initially their first role models are their parents. And what you see is that they aspire. If you might have someone, whatever profession they're doing, obviously if they want their children to excel, But sometimes if you ask them, what do you want to be? They'll say, I want to be so and so because their father is a so and so, because they see them as the benchmark. And also you'll see with children, whenever they do something, they always want to, that's why they come to their parents, have a look at this, have a look at that, because they want their parents to endorse it. But that's really nice.
Or even like, why are you doing this? Oh, because so and so does it, or because that guy on telly is doing it. So there's like the role model provides like a justification for the child to say, I want to do that because all of my friends are doing it. So there's always that.
No, but initially as parents, but what would you think about popular culture? Where does popular culture play a role?
This is what I was going to mention, because, I was thinking about this on the way here. At the end of the day, right, this society, it's goal-driven, it's target-driven, and the role models and the people who have status, they call it celebrity status, are the ones who have achieved those goals, the goals that society wants. What is this society all about? Material things, wealth, and all that kind of stuff. So when people look up to role models, what are these people have? What do they all have in common? They're really rich. They've got a lot of material wealth.
They maybe got there really quickly.
Especially YouTubers.
Exactly. Yeah. But think about the old one. What was the old role models? Forbes 100 list, top 100 rich celebrities, richest people. There's been throughout time. But it's someone to aspire to. And this is really important because it's society. So you have your home role model, your mom, your dad, and they give you the qualities. But in the outside world, it's society who provides those role models. And it says, these are the options you have. When I go back to that 15-year-old, I didn't know what to answer, because I used to play a lot of video games and I wasn't going to aspire to be Echo the Dolphin.
Did you say Sonic the Hedgehog?
Sonic the Hedgehog.
But the funny thing is, if you speak to a kid nowadays, speak to your cousins and your nephews and whatnot, and they'll all say, I want to be, not all,
Messi.
Okay, I want to be either a football player, I want to be Ronaldo, Messi or whatever, or I want to be a YouTuber. Because I want to be able to, and again, you don't blame them, because that's the society that they're being brought in. This is not, why do you want to aspire to be a YouTuber? But the idea is, if they're seeing other kids are able to not really need to do this like 9-to-5 job that their parents are doing. And actually in our society, maybe parents doing around the clock, if your dad's doing like taxis and stuff like that, sometimes what happens, or even working in a restaurant, then you sometimes don't even see your parents, or you don't see your dad most of the time.
Old school,
exactly. Yeah. And so you might even aspire to thinking, well, I don't want to be like that where I'm not going to see my children. So I want to do this job, which means minimizing the number of hours I might need to do, maximizing kind of financially, and then being able to spend time with my family. Not saying the kids necessarily think that deeply, but all I'm saying is that someone could justify it like that if you argue against it.
When you mentioned in schools, the sort of role models that are pushed are your Einsteins and your
Gandhis and
Winston Churchill and Nightingale. But what my point is, or what my question is where does popular culture come from then? If we're saying that the schools are providing this, so popular culture, who is deciding what's popular culture? You understand? Because from what I can see, is children are more, or forget children, humans are more influenced in society than they are in their schools.
Yeah.
So where does popular culture emanate from?
You know, the way I look at it is popular culture, especially nowadays, it's quite an interesting question, really, because popular culture nowadays is pushed more because of like the manifestation of the creed, the natural creed that we live in. Because we're in a capitalist society built on concepts such as freedoms. These societies have now been around for a while. You know, they went through difficult times earlier doors, but now, you know, kind of the times when there was the world wars around, you know, people were struggling, food, all of these things. They've now progressed to a level, and progress is probably the wrong word to use, but they've now got to this level where freedoms have allowed them to almost express themselves even more. So there's now so many different fields of entertainment, celebrity culture, you know, different, you know, imagine when we were younger, there was 4 or 5 channels on TV. Now you've got 1,000. Four.
Yeah.
Okay.
When the 5th one came, it was like,
wow, we got
wow,
Channel
man,
5.
have we reached salvation now? You know
And
what I mean?
now, like thousands of channels. And forget channels. Now there's Netflix, and I know we talked a bit about it last time, so I won't go into too much now. But now there's so much kind of avenue towards getting kind of that satisfaction and that gratification that I think popular culture has just exploded. And I think the people that steer it, some of it might be organic, because some of it might be, you know, what kids into, so football and what, you know, computer games. These two things, or sport and computer games, are massive. Yeah, but also there are kind of steering of people towards busying themselves in entertainment, also from the elites. So this is something that I don't think people always appreciate.
Got a question for you, Shi. You know, if and we are saying that popular culture emanates from the ideology, the prevailing ideology, right? Yeah. And certainly in the West, we see the ideology is built on secularism. Okay, you know, separating the creator from man's affairs. Definitely. Yeah, in society certainly, and we see from this we have the freedoms. Okay, and you know, so if we see that this is the and Rash did touch upon it, we see that this is the type of environment people are living in now. So obviously, the role models that this ideology is going to be promoting is going to be in line with this. Okay, so in current times, what do you think? What sort of role models do you think? And I know Rash touched upon about footballers and stuff like that, but it linked to the ideology. What do you think is being promoted as role models? Because yeah, sportsmen will be role models, but sportsmen have always been role models to a certain degree. But in regards to pushing that concept of freedom and stuff like this, what sort of role models do you think they're pushing now?
You know, we obviously mentioned this a few days back that we were going to have this discussion. So what I decided to do was take a slightly different turn on this. So I asked my sisters, who are the role models that are pushing to females? Because they are sort of, and you know what she said? She goes, go from your workplace, when you come back from your workplace, and walk and see how many adverts there are for women. She goes, we're bombarded with this. I just want to go back onto Rasha's point. You know, this society is a godless society. They don't believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or God, has any role in this society. So you might as well make the most of it whilst you can. Enjoy yourself, get as much as possible. I don't know if you remember that 50 Cent's album, Get Rich or Die Trying. It's that attitude. And what they do is they show you ways how you can be that person. So there's adverts. You could be like David Beckham. If you wear his, you know, those boxers, you can be like him. And you can have all the ladies. And these are the material stuff, because this is what all the society pushes.
Being bombarded with it.
Ladies do like wear less to get further in life. Unfortunately, I know that's a bit horrible to face, but that is the way society is pushed. You know, the ideal is be beauties rather than be brains. Otherwise, where are you going to get? You're just going to be that frumpy old woman in the office. And that is how society is attacking its own people. It's saying, this is what you want to be. This is how you're going to get to where you want to get to.
Okay. Do you know what it is? That's a sick point, because you know this idea of commercialism, commercialization has actually bred this level of freedom that has no boundaries. That's what the godless society gives you, because, like I say, there's nothing wrong with making, you know, selling your product and, you know, having to promote your product, marketing your product. But you can go to an extreme where, because there's no accountability to how you promote it, now it's all about how do I maximize my profits? Whether that means I have to bombard 5-year-old kids with things that normally you wouldn't even think about, but because it's going to increase your sales, all of a sudden it's acceptable in this society.
On top of that, these people, once they get to that position, what do? They start talking about the issues of the society. Now it's the LGBTQ I don't know if there's a plus now or something as well.
Trust me, you can add as many letters
So
as you like.
Bro, soon as the whole alphabet is going to be added to that, man.
Exactly. So the point is, I remember like people like that Lady Gaga. I don't know if she's still relevant. I'm a bit out of touch with what's going on in modern times.
You listen to all these tracks, right? So,
bro, I'm talking about
you're
50
the only
Cent.
one mentioned 50 Cent, Lady Gaga. I'm sure you can give some more examples throughout this podcast.
Well, I don't know yet, but anyway, the point is this, right? They talk about women's issues. They talk about LGBT, and they bring it about. And you know, when you think about it, not only are they pushing the ideals of this godless society, they're pushing these issues. I remember back in the day, there was on EastEnders, I'll come back to that point again, what was there? The first Muslim gay on TV.
Yeah.
Think about that. Now that's become a discussion in your house. First, it was outside. It wasn't your issue, but now it's come to your house to spark that debate. What do you think about it?
So with role models and currently, if you can give some sort of names, because in this godless society, as you guys have termed it, it's quite hardcore, but it is the truth, right? Who are the role models? I mean, you know, even historically, think about it. Think about, just say Britain. Because obviously when we're talking about this society, we're talking about the Western world in a sense, right? But let's just say use Britain. So for Britain, you have, for example, Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill is seen as a hero, right? But the reality is this guy was a mass murderer.
Exactly.
Yeah, this guy was he was anti-Islam. Actually, he was a racist, you know. But this guy has been, and if you watch the interviews between the Scottish lad and Piers Morgan, you know, it's almost like blasphemy to pinpoint the ills and negatives about this guy, you know. So when they promote him, when they'll promote him as a role model, but in the military sense, i.e. to encourage people to join their militaries so that they and go and invade other lands. In reality, what would we say are other examples of current role models being pushed? I want names.
So think about it, right? Going back to songs now, I don't know why I've gone down this avenue. That Beyonce had that independent woman song, so that she's pushing that kind of stuff. Kim Kardashian, I don't know what she does, but I hear her name all the time. But she's like always pushing stuff.
But you know, you're giving these examples from what I've noticed from the youngsters.
Yeah.
You know, you said if you want to know, right now, things like Ninja, the guy who plays Fortnite.
Yeah. He won 3 million.
This guy, yeah, and your Paul, what's the guy's
Logan
name?
Paul.
Logan Paul.
Prankster, you can do it at home.
And even, you know, these are the sort of things I think now are being pushed. And I think Rash mentioned it earlier. He certainly mentioned to me, maybe as another setting, is one thing that these guys push as ideas, concepts, no matter who they are. They push you should be free to do what you want to do.
Yes.
Also, they push that you can be however you are and people will accept you. Because remember that guy got in trouble when he went into this jungle and someone committed suicide. And it was the same guy, wasn't it?
Logan Paul.
Is that the same guy, yeah?
Logan Paul,
right? Also, what they show is this is how you want to get rich, quick time, just messing about.
Exactly.
So I think YouTubers are having a big effect on as role models right now.
I'll tell you something really interesting, right? You know, we were talking about all these rights and sort of stuff. You know, there's a new trend of makeup artists and makeup like beauty and something you can do at home. One of the biggest beauty sort of bloggers, I was speaking to people at work, is actually a transgender person called Jeffrey or something like that. And so he's promoting those ideas and all that kind of stuff. So not only are they doing that, they're actually coming into the youngster's house and saying, you can be this and you can look great and beautiful and you can achieve so much and be accepted. So there is that message. So, you know...
So, bro, I'll be straight with you. I'm getting a bit worried about you, you know. You know, some of the examples you gave. Because I'm thinking Messi, I'm thinking Ronaldo, I'm thinking gamers and some of the examples you gave, bro. Actually, I'm just worried whether you're being influenced by these role models.
Listen, you know, the thing is, I've got nephews and nieces, and this is what they talk about.
Subhanallah, really?
And you know, at the end
about
of the
this, like this.
this is the thing.
Yesterday, someone shared this, an audio of what it was. Is this child had come home from school, hadn't even gone home yet, went straight to the mosque, and she was telling her ustad, that, today at school, I was asked first of all, do I feel like a boy or a girl, or am I not sure? And how old was she? I think she was 9. And then she had to do a survey, basically. And she was asked that question first. And she said, I felt really uncomfortable because I know I'm a girl, but why should I have to answer this strange question? Then the second question was something like, are you happy with your body? This is 8, 9-year-old. And this is a school in London. And this was like a few days ago. And then there was some other questions, I think, and it was all about kind of making children feel insecure. Even if, for instance, they've never asked that question or thought about it, all of a sudden, someone putting that, someone who's in that position of influence and authority over you, your teacher, giving you something, posing questions to you that all of a sudden you have to think about, what kind of society is that creating?
And remember, teachers, people look up to them.
Exactly.
If someone asked me, if I was at school, are you happy with your body? I said, no. I want to know like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know what I mean? But obviously, right now, what they're trying to do, because remember at the same time they're promoting 100 genders.
100 genders, yeah.
Okay, moving on. Let's move on now, right? Because otherwise, I'm going to get some more freaky examples by Ishti. Obviously,
well, no, it's worth talking about the footballer type example because that's quite relevant recently, isn't it? Because even though I don't want to talk too much about Mo Salah, as much as I love him as a brother, being a United fan, it's a bit hard to speak about.
I'm going to go on to that. I'm going to go. The reason why, what I'm saying now, is for Muslims, even though we live in the same societies, but I personally think, you know, for example, these drag queens and stuff like that being shown as role models, I don't think they can, to a certain degree, infiltrate the younger Muslim youth because we have certain principles that we get from home, right?
Of course.
But what do we think? Who are the role models for Muslims that we see being promoted? And now you can make your point because
I was going to jump in there and say Khabib.
No, bro.
And then I'll let you talk about Mo Salah.
I'm not as into like MMA and stuff like that, so you can give the examples of Khabib and stuff like that, and it's worth talking about him definitely for a few other reasons. But yeah, so the ones I'm seeing a lot of, again, being around guys and stuff like that, is that they talk about Mo Salah,
Pogba.
Quite a lot. Pogba, obviously a lot of videos of when he was at Hajj was being shared with Mo Salah and Sadio Mane. So talking about Liverpool players is a bit hard for me, but but yeah. So some of these players, alhamdulillah, what it is, this is where I think the issue is that these are people who are naturally role models because they're in a business or in a sport that people look up to. As Muslims, we are yearning for role models in the public space. Yeah, because look, when we go to schools and stuff like that, we know that we're Muslim at the end of the day. To know that there's someone who's a footballer who's Muslim who then has a personal life similar to ours, where they go to Jummah, where they go to pray, where they say Alhamdulillah, and all of these type of things, that naturally feels good to us. So we're yearning for them. But my question has always been is that do they themselves put themselves on a pedestal and say, I want to be an Islamic role model? Or is it just that they're trying to practice their deen as best as they can being in that type of industry? I think it's us who put them on that pedestal and make them role models. And I think where that becomes problematic is because all of a sudden they might not want to be Islamic role models themselves. They just want to get on with what they do.
When you say role models as well, also I'd say heroes.
Yeah, heroes. No, it's similar, isn't it?
Similar.
So as young kids, you're going to go, okay, obviously I look up to Pogba, I look up to, and because again they show an element of Islam in their day-to-day life, and that feels good for us. But at the same time, then because of where they are and the industry and all of these things, say for instance Khabib, when he then turns up shaking hands with Vladimir Putin, or being
I think the Khabib one will come to that, because I think that's a spicy topic, because you know we have to explain ourselves properly, because a lot of people are on that bandwagon. But what I would say is about these football examples you gave, I think you bang on, bro, in the sense like these guys, you know, obviously Brother Ishti is a engineer, you know, and you're some director somewhere. Right?
Not quite.
I don't know what you do, bro.
We hardly ever talk about work. This just goes to prove what we know we're talking about.
But the point is that you are Muslim and you're that. So you know these guys like Mo Salah and Sadio Mane, they've come from Muslim lands. Okay, they've come from Muslim because you also get Muslim footballers who were like Algerians, but they were brought up in France and stuff, right? But you see difference between people from Egypt and these places. Why? Because you know they've come from a land where praying Salah is very normal, being good, feeding the poor. These are normal things now. So these guys are just footballers by profession, but they're nice people. Yeah, so what tends to happen is that when I see a clip of Sadio Mane, you know, cleaning the wudu area of a masjid, right? Yes. You know, I guarantee, you know, to him, he's just doing something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's not even thought about it, right? But the video goes viral. Why? Because Muslims are also looking for these type of role models. Like, yeah, look, this guy's a good footballer, but you know he's Muslim as well, right? I think there's a lot of pressure on these guys, because these guys are just normal people. They just want to go about their business, play their football what they like. earn the money, you know. But I think the point you made was fantastic. I think we elevate them to that stage, and now I think is a good point to bring in Khabib, because you know Khabib, you know, this is someone because of the bullshit guy, you know, you know, McGregor, the bullshit guy, yeah. Khabib, if you think about it, you know, had McGregor not made all these derogatory terms against Islam, right? Khabib would probably not have got the same following he has, because when this guy was making all these comments, normal people were like, I want this guy's head smashed in, right? You know, and so now when Khabib is coming on, and again, Khabib, he's a Muslim. He's grown up in Islamic area. He's subhanallah, his family are religious. You can see this from his background. They all pray and they got beards, and you know the names are like Islam this and Islam that. You know, you can't get away from this, right? So now, you know, he's just in the MMA business. He's just in the MMA business. So when he is saying Alhamdulillah and he's saying Inshallah and these things, and you know, and then on the other side you got a guy who's insulting him. The reality is that the reason why his stock has risen because of the McGregor thing is probably again injustice on him, because it became a Islam and Kufr thing.
Yes,
that's the point. It became a Islam and Kufr thing. This guy's been on the scene for a while. I've followed this guy for a while. Obviously because he's Muslim, but because for a while. But to the average person, why this guy is big now is because people saw it as a Islam Kufr thing. When they saw the battle between him and McGregor, you know, it was like as if this is going to be written in history next to Badr and Uhud. They elevated it to this. No, I'm being serious. So now there's all this pressure on this guy, and Alhamdulillah, he seems like a good guy. But where people get confused now is what Rash mentioned, is when you see him shaking hands with Vladimir Putin, when you see him, you know, with the leaders of the Emirates, the UAE. This is where the confusion lies, because now you're thinking there are some people that are going to oversee this, but there are other people who are more Islamically inclined. They're more aware about what's in the Ummah. They're thinking, wait, you know, this guy, we elevated him to a certain degree, but now he's shaking hands with the guy who's killing Muslims in Syria. There's a confusion, right? So, you know, on that note, the issue of Khabib is something which we want to talk about it from an Islamic point of view, not from an athlete point of view, and not from a personal point of view from him. He never brought politics into it.
Exactly.
He never brought politics into it. So that's why I think it's an injustice, the same way as Sadio Mane and Salah, that we've actually elevated him to a stage. Why? Because we are looking for role models, we look for heroes.
It's like Rash at the start of this discussion mentioned, there's that need to revere someone. And you know, Muslims have for many, many years been deprived of this because we've been made out to be the bad guys. And finally, we've got a few good heroes. We're going to, of course, jump at we're just going to be, you know, like, that's it, that's our guy now. And we're going to try and emulate him as much as possible. But unfortunately, with the role models that this society produces, it's almost like sweet and sour. The sweet is the good thing. Oh, you should look after your parents. This is what Khabib said after his Poirier fight.
Yeah, subhanAllah.
Yeah, you should always listen to him in that exuberance of youth. You tend to forget them. But that's what brought him success. So, you know, there's a really good flavour. Do you remember the Salah chants that the footballers had? If you score another, we'll go to mosque and this.
Become Muslim.
Even become Muslim and all that kind of stuff. And that elevated him. But what makes a good Muslim? Sometimes we forget that. It's the characteristics. It's that whole package. And the fact that you can shake a man's hand that killed, is responsible for the death of so many Muslims, and look up to him.
Okay, so my question is what is Islamically, what is a good role model Islamically now? We're talking about Islam, innit? What is Islamically, what do we look at, what qualities do we look at within a role model for somebody who actually ticks all the boxes Islamically?
So, you know, I think we have... Sorry to interrupt so we have to go back to the brother's point about creed and what that brings, right? So obviously we have our deen, and our deen tells us what is a good person. Someone who does have good manners, who has good characteristics. But At the same time, he embodies the whole of the deen as well. So when it comes to shaking these people's hands, is he willing to do that? Is he someone who you should aspire to? Is he the one that's addressing the issues of the people? Because what did the Prophet ﷺ say? You know, the scholars, you know, the leaders, the people that you should be looking up to, they're the inheritors of the Prophet.
So what you're saying is role models for Muslims are scholars, not just scholars, but scholars is a good role model.
You know what is worth mentioning?
I was gonna, if I just finish for a moment, right? And what you mentioned, what this is in line with is the people who take on his mission, because he was on a mission.
Subhanallah.
You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he is not your father, he's not your brother, he's a prophet. Allah sent him on his mission. And the scholars are the ones who take that mission and lead it. They're not someone who's just learnt from a book or from a university. They're the inheritors of his mission. And the best people, the best role models in our history, and the ones that we should have today, are the ones who uphold his mission, who inherit his mission and continue that mission. And that is what Islamic scholar is. Sorry to interrupt you there.
It's a really good point. If you don't mind, if I can just elaborate a little bit on it, the way I understand it is very much around the fact that, you know, it comes back to the point about yearning for role models, yeah? Because if you think about it, we know, you know, someone might say it might sound a bit boring and talking about popular culture and stuff like this 1 minute, but we know our role model is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Uswatun Hasana. We know that he's our role model, but we live in this society, and that's why I want to just elaborate. You said about the creed, isn't it? About we know that this society will breed role models based on its creed, in the same way as when Islam was dominant, when Islam was implemented, when we saw Islam progressing, the dominant ideology, when it was Islam, the type of role models that it bred were the scientists and the people who progressed Islam. So, like your Salahuddin al-Ayyubis, we still talk about them today, like Ertugrul, which is getting really popular now. So it was either those people who progressed the deen, or it was those people who personified the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam the best. Yes. So that when that creed is there, then naturally the role models that arrive from it are from that creed. And this is where I wanted to extend from that point was very much. We see a society today, truthfully, the Western world and this society, they don't have true role models. So what do? They either make people who shouldn't be role models, like your Churchills, like your Abraham Lincolns, who get allocated the role of, he abolished slavery. But actually, when anybody who does any more study into this will know what some of his white supremacist type views really were. While he contributed to it, a lot of what it was done, there was many political reasons around it. There was many reasons he continued to believe that the white race was superior to the black race. There was many reasons why slavery continued long after. So what they do is they make those people role models because they take some good from it, because it might have had some impact. But actually what they end up doing is making role models them out, random ones, like making them up, like you have your DC comics versus your Marvel. So now you got all these role models that are like superheroes, which no one can aspire to be because they're not real.
But people like Superman, what do they represent? The American ideal.
Yeah, exactly. So these role models are either fabricated in order to let people aspire to something, or they're people that have abhorrent ideas but were put up on a pedestal and are being promoted as role models. However, if you look at the Islamic creed, you see role models all over the place. Yet when a child goes to school, they're not going to say necessarily, okay, alhamdulillah, it's getting better, but so the odd child might go, my role model is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Or a kid might go to school, he probably get latched on by Prevent, where he might go, my role model is Ertugrul, he spread Islam this far. Nowadays, you'd be almost a little bit like, if you say that at school, what's going to happen?
Especially if you said Bamsi, then it's going to be.
And if he brings in a clip when they getting their swords out and going,
I thought you were going to say getting their spoons out.
All their spoons out, yeah, alhamdulillah. So actually, all of a sudden, the signs are positive. This is not to paint like a really bad picture. The signs are positive, but at the same time, it's very difficult for those children to go into that society and not say, "Oh, my role model is Mohammed Salah or it's Paul Pogba," because the society is pushing them towards certain role models. Whereas if the dominant ideology or if the dominant kind of creed that was there was Islamic, naturally we would be saying, well, we have real role models and those are the ones we should aspire to. And then to finish my point is, I think that's where that naturally leads on to that the other side, other than those who progressed Islam kind of via jihad and fighting, it was the scholars. So we should talk about scholars, because we look back and the people we talk about, when we talk about all of the different madahibs, we talk about all of the different people who spread Islam, the people who came at times where Islam was struggling for whatever reason. Maybe it was because the hadith were, being corrupted. So then you had your Bukharis come along who said, we need to do something about this. So those are really the role models and the people that we look up to when we become a bit more learned.
So in regards to scholars, what sort of qualities do we see in the scholars? And I think Ishi made a fantastic point, the fact that they are the inheritors of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What do they inherit? In fact, they inherit his mission. In fact, also you'd say, you might agree, that they also inherit his struggle, his hardships, because the mission of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is one where you will come across problems, you will come across issues, and we see this, right? So some of the qualities we see are that. Also maybe because they always refer back to Quran and Sunnah, and the point you made was a fantastic point. Well, actually both of you made it, when it's a creedal issue from Islam, the best of those, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the best of those, in speech, are those who call to Islam. Now, even though every Muslim is a dawah carrier, really should be anyway, but the scholars hold that position, don't they? Because they make us understand, they break down Islam for us, they make it easy for us to understand. They are reference points, okay? So, we're talking about scholars, we're talking about role models.
Can I just add one point?
Very quick then.
And this is, I mentioned, like these Western celebrities, they bring about that change,
like 50 Cent, like Lady Gaga,
all that kind of stuff. Let's not go back to that. But what I was going to say is the people that we mentioned and referred to, they brought that change. When Islam was in difficulty, I don't mean the deen of Islam, when the Muslims were in difficulty, they're the ones that made the difference. So maybe the ones that made scientific progress, they were going to progress the deen of Allah by their advances. The scholars, they came to address an issue. And these are our role models because they came to address the issues of society, just like the celebrities. And that's what makes them role models. They made that difference. Even like people like Abraham Lincoln, he's the one that emancipated the slaves, allegedly. And that is the ideal of freedom. And that's where it's all linked to, that creed. But the point is, for us as Muslims, we want to see that change. And that's what our role models should bring, that change.
The thing is all role models, I think, will bring about change. But some will bring about good change and some will bring about bad change.
Look, we can talk about some of the examples where, and you already mentioned it about the scholars being the inheritors of the Prophet. So we can talk about where Islam, in terms of the evidences, has given us reasons of the importance of scholars. But you know what? Sometimes it's dead easy to throw out lots of evidences. But if people don't appreciate what that means and really embody that, then you almost look at the evidence and go, you take it at face value and you move on. But you know what? To be fair, just to look at it rationally, any type of revival of a society happens with ideas. So to revive a new society, to almost say this society has declined, I want to increase them. You do it by changing their ideas. You improve their ideas. You almost filter out the bad ideas and you leave the good ideas. How does that happen? It happens using dialogue. It happens where someone who understands, for example, someone who understands the deen better than anybody else, if they come along and they're good at explaining it, maybe they're very good at articulating it, maybe they've got a tone that you listen to and it warms your heart, so if that person, and these are scholars that I'm talking about, if that scholar can come and say they understand the deen, they're going to help revive the people, such that the people kind of throw away the bad ideas and or even gravitate away from the bad role models and gravitate towards the good role models. That's the duty of those people who have knowledge. That's the duty of those people who can revive that society. And that's the scholar, the way I look at it.
No, subhanAllah. I think that's bang on. So, okay, then obviously we gave examples in the past, well, not in the past as such, but earlier on about good role models, bad role models, etc., right? So what about the scholars today then? Because I think this is an issue because of the fact that exactly from what Rasha said there, because if these people are coming, they come with authority, they are articulate, they are good speakers, and they move the emotions, and right. But what is their message? Because this could actually work out as in the opposite direction. Because if somebody fits all all the criteria, ticks the boxes of the appearance, the speech, the knowledge, but his message itself is somewhat incorrect, I think this is a problem. So let's take, the issue is that here obviously Voice of the Ummah, it's not about picking on anyone, but the truth is the truth. And sometimes when people are in the firing line, if they put themselves in the firing line, then you have to speak about them in person. Definitely. Why? Because you have to point out that because of the responsibility they have and the influence they carry. So if you look at some examples, and I want to cover today, okay, the first one would be Hamza Yusuf, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, and this the reason why is because we know there's some controversy that's happened in the last few weeks, okay, where there was a video that was released from a speech in Turkey where Sheikh Hamza Yusuf was in a way, from what people perceived, there's two elements to it. One was the fact that he was in a way people saw it as ridiculing the Syrian people, the plight of the Syrian people, because he was laughing and joking, and saying like, where has this revolution got you? Okay. Then there was the other angle which is actually probably more dangerous than that one, and I'll explain why. Where he's actually promoting.
Can you just explain what actually happened?
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, okay.
So
no, in the video
in the video, basically, what he was saying was that the Syrian people, because they rose up against Assad or people like previously people rose up against Saddam.
Yeah.
What he was saying is that where's your revolution got you?
Yes.
Look at the situation you're in now. And he was saying this while he was laughing.
And he used it in line with that hadith.
Yeah, he used it, but I'll come to that hadith.
Yeah.
We'll come to that hadith, bro. Chill. Yeah? Okay? So that was the first point. But the second point was the fact that he was using the hadith, which you can explain. He was, in a way, trying to say that, look, you shouldn't rise up against your leaders because there's a hikmah why they're there. They're there, Allah's put them there. And in fact, if you do rise up, then this is what's going to happen. And even though he came out later on and he apologized, but in reality his apology really was more to do with, look, if I hurt your feelings, if I hurt anyone's feelings, that wasn't my intention. But his initial position, which is the problem position of being in line with the current dictators in that land, yes. Having close relationship with the tyrants like MBZ of UAE, right? This, he never changed his position. Okay, so this is so in regards to the hadith, if you want to just mention the hadith element then, because
you know what, it's sort of left my mind's gone blank on that.
Okay, that's fine. You'll come to that. But now this is someone, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. If you look at his material before 9/11, they say that he's probably the most influential, certainly in the last 30, 40, 50 years.
The West's most influential scholar is what he was known as.
Most influential scholar in the West. Where his firebrand type of attitude in the past before 9/11 against the rulers in the Muslim lands, even against capitalism. If you listen to his speech, he won a lot of hearts. People were, especially also the fact that he was a revert and etc., yes. Right? So this is where there's a dangerous element, because now you have somebody who in fact is saying, don't rise up, you shouldn't rise up, just stick with it in a way that, some people might argue he wasn't saying that, but in reality, that's what he was saying, because many scholars have even refuted his position. Okay, people with knowledge. But now, for all the people that follow him, where does this leave them? And you spoke about role models, especially scholars bring about change. If we follow that message,
there's no change.
There is no change. So how does that affect the people?
Just to start off, just one point to make about that is, first and foremost, scholars will make mistakes. They're human beings.
Yes.
We're human beings. We will make mistakes. Scholars will make mistakes.
No doubt.
Yeah. And he came out and he apologized.
Yeah.
Okay. So scholars will make mistakes, and that's recognizable. And at the same time, if scholars do make mistakes, we should be prepared to say they made a mistake. They apologized it. We accept their apology.
Of course.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially if someone has that kind of position of influence. But where we just have to be very, very careful is, when certain scholars are associated to the establishment, and we have evidences of where we are told that scholars should avoid being, at the doorsteps of the leaders, for example. At the same time, when you have scholars, and I'm talking in general terms here, when you have scholars who are, giving advice to governments who are the governments that are fighting the war on Islam.
Yeah.
When you have scholars that are involved in the projects like your CVE, countering violent extremism, which is very, very problematic, and which spawned like Prevent in the UK, and even the people of America. So, for example, I've been listening to the Mad Mamluks podcast quite a bit recently, and one thing I was really actually quite surprised at and also quite pleased about is I always saw the kind of the American audience as people who may have been a bit more naive to the political kind of space in terms of what's happening outside America. But actually, what listening to some of those podcasts kind of seemed to get across to me was actually people do or are aware of the problematic nature of things like CVE and how it impacts the UAE and Middle East and even like Britain and other places. So I thought that was quite interesting. But this is where I think scholars that are affiliated or linked or advising or over that period of time have those kind of links, basically. That's where people need to question.
That's where you've even got the position in the human rights. The Trump in the Trump administration.
So basically, the Trump administration created a forum called the Commission for Unalienable Rights. So he's going to advise Trump, the renowned Islamophobe. He hates Muslims. He came in and one of the first things he did, he brought the Muslim travel ban. We might as well call it that. It was. I know he named countries rather than saying Muslim, but it's to advise him on human rights. He was the one and only Muslim representative to accept the war on terror after 9/11. These are the people you're talking about. These ain't mistakes, they're choices. You make it once, you make it twice, and then you come out and you say that mistakes. But these are creedal level.
So I think the point you're making there is you make mistakes, people make mistakes, but in fact, people might have short memory about Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, like from 2 weeks ago, from what's been released.
Yeah.
But what Ishi's talking about there is all the way back to 9/11, exactly. And the Bush administration, being there, singing the national anthem, being in the...
this is why I wanted to give the framework.
Yeah.
Because if you understand the framework, then you can take whichever scholar it is and go, does it fit in that framework, isn't it? So, like I said, the framework is about we should forgive. But at the same time, if you're in that framework where you're contributing to projects and strategies that are against Islam, then that's very problematic and you should realize that. But at the same time, the framework has to be that, we're saying that Muslims need to instigate change. Like you made the point already, but just to elaborate on it, is Muslims need to make change. And if there are scholars or anybody who is almost maintaining the status quo, then how is that ever going to lead to change? And some of the points that, I know I've watched both, his apology video and gone through the original video was from a few years ago. It wasn't recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was back 2016. And maybe even the person who cut the video and pasted it had an agenda. So this is to say that, sometimes people take things out of context. Fair enough. Yeah. Might have had an agenda. But, if you look at all of that, you will realize that the message that is being promoted is the same message as his person who he aspires to, his teacher, bin Bayyah, is promoting. Is the message of, that you can't rebel against the leaders. Okay, and that message is quite dangerous because there's an element of it. If you watch the videos, you'll see there's an element of it that you look at and you go, it's good, the message, in that what it's saying is if you're not ready to suddenly revolt, it's going to cause bloodshed. Yeah, if the people are not ready and you don't have the security and you don't have the capability, then you should work towards building that capability. So in that respect, we understand that from the seerah, from the methodology of the Prophet ﷺ, we do need to go through that process of preparing people. But the problem is, that's not the conclusion that he derived from it. In the same way as bin Bayyah and some of his projects and some of his institutes and things that he's doing and some of the funding that comes from the UAE, some of the things that have been written in the Rand Corporation where it's talking about moderate Islamic movements. The Rand Corporation actually wrote that what we should advise the Muslim lands is that they instigate these institutions that promote moderate Islam. And these institutions that were then created off the back of that are the institutions that are led by your likes of your Abdallah bin Bayyah. And then those are the same ideas being promoted by Hamza Yusuf. Then at the same time, all of a sudden you look through all those videos and there's nothing there that he says clearly that, okay, prepare properly and then get rid of these tyrants. Don't just go out and do it and cause bloodshed. Instead it's, okay, maybe there was hikmah and the wisdom behind keeping all these tyrants above you. And then it's still an element of ridiculing the people who are trying to do something without appreciating that, what they're going to be doing is very rewardable actions.
I think key point also you said is that, you can't look at the actions of people like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf or Sheikh bin Bayyah. You can't look at them in isolation of the American plan for the region. How can it be, and I know Arash mentioned this in one of the earlier podcasts, that how can it be that you have the Rand Corporation, you have the Greater Middle East Initiative, and then you look at the actions of some of these scholars who are not people like me and you. They're not people of the street. These people have understood Islam. They've studied it for many, many years. How can it be that it's in line, exactly in line with what America is trying to achieve?
Let me give you some quotes quickly, sorry to interrupt, just from Rand Corporation. So this is what they say. Rand recommends that the United States concentrate on the partners, programs and regions where US support has the greatest likelihood of affecting the war of ideas underway in the Muslim world. Okay, and the war of ideas, what they're talking about is people who want political Islam, who want comprehensive implementation of Islam. That's what they're talking about. Then it says, Rand recommends opening channels of communication that will encourage the dissemination of modern and mainstream interpretations of Islam back in the Middle East from moderate Muslims elsewhere. So in other words, export or import in moderate versions of Islam and do it using people who have your tongue, who can speak your language, and institutes that we can then create this version of Islam in your lands, which is a moderate version of Islam, which isn't the version of Islam most Muslims want. How more blatant does that need to be? And this is, like I said previously, this then forms Western foreign policy. It forms US foreign policy, and then that has a natural effect on foreign policy in other lands. Sorry.
No. I was going to mention pretty much the same point a bit later on. But I think it's really, really important because, you might look at several scholars. We've obviously mentioned Hamza Yusuf, right? And we've mentioned their history. But they're all individual scholars. But if you look at them all as a collective, right? See, I'll give you an example, right? Say there's a football coach, right? And he's teaching these players. And he's showing them and there's progress, blah, blah, blah. After a couple of years, you'd accept them to be a cohesive team. What have the scholars been up to? We've gone further from Islam, what they've been teaching us. Yet, if you look at the plan of the American and what the Rand Corporation say, we've gone closer to that. So individually, their actions might be different, but as a collective, they're trying to move us towards that vision. And that's what they've been working towards. I mean, one of the things that they actually meant to mention clearly is to use young, moderate, religious scholars. Why scholars? Why young? We have to focus on these things. So the young, it's easier to communicate with the young. The previous generations, they're stuck in their way. That's who their aim is. That is what the audience is now. Moderate, it's not moderate in the sense that we understand. It's what they want to be moderate. peaceful to the West and harsh to the Islamic way of life. They want us to reject Islam as it should be and accept democracy, secularism, and if you're not going to accept it, be tolerant to it, and all that kind of stuff.
So even like, when you mentioned young, even the issue of the homegrown imams.
Exactly.
Because, subhanAllah, you had some uncles who were like imams and stuff who came from India and Bangladesh or Pakistan, right? And these people, they might not have been like too much of a threat, but still, the sort of traditional Islam they followed. Previously, that could influence the children in a way that's not correct. So the homegrown was, like you're saying, is actually from the beginning, they are built up to become in these positions from the beginning.
And this is why they create these institutes. You're right about this. The age thing is important. The reason why they create these institutes is because they recognize, even in the video, what did Hamza Yusuf actually say in his apology video? I'm turning 63 soon. I'm getting quite old now. I'm not going to be around for too long. He even compared it to, this is about the age that the Prophet ﷺ passed away. So he's trying to say, look, I've done my work. There's institutes and stuff that he started because they recognize that these are games that need to carry on for a long time, or these are projects that need to carry on for a long time. So this is why youth is important, because you need to get people who are going to continue this project.
Okay, so the issue of Sheikh Hamza Yusuf isn't just to highlight him.
No, exactly.
It's just to give the example. You guys are speaking about scholars, and just to raise up the issue of what scholars should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing, and if they're doing the things that they shouldn't be doing, yet they're in a position where they can influence people as a role model, we can see how dangerous that is. But I want to quickly move on to an imam, if you want to call it that. I don't think, actually, maybe a scholar, Allahu Alam, to somewhere closer to home, is Dr. Musharraf and the majestic Quran. And because this, subhanAllah, we can speak about Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and Sheikh bin Bayyah and all these other sheikhs, right, the scholars, and we do pray. We pray that the Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, he can be such a huge asset to the Ummah if he reboots to be pre-9/11. So it's not an issue about the individual, but with the issue to do with the majestic Quran and the issue to do with Dr. Musharraf is something which, I think is important to highlight. Why? Because this is a very risky move from their part, high stakes, but what they're trying to push through the majestic Quran is something which is probably that even people like Sheikh Hamza and all the other scholars, even they didn't have the courage or the audacity, shall I say, to come out with.
Just a quick word on a bit about Dr. Musharraf before we go into the details. He's the director of an institute called Karimia,
bruv.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
You gotta get back to your roots, man. You're the Lady Gaga thing and all that. It's getting to you too much. You gotta remember where you came from. It's Karimia, yeah.
Okay. He was an advisor to the anti-Islamic Quilliam Foundation. Renowned. He's also renowned for receiving a continued funding from PVE. So this is just a background of the prevent violent extremism, that anti-Islamic.
You say continued, like up until today even.
He still receives it. You can actually check the account. So this is the sort of characteristics of the person that we're talking about. He's famous for having a covenant with the armed forces, so that Muslim businesses, 16 Muslim businesses when it first opened, employ people from the armed forces after wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, etc. And he's very adept. He wants to normalize relationships with disbelievers, like accepting other beliefs and not like Islam is just another belief. But also he very famously visited Israel on the behest or on the invitation of the embassy to the 1 second, so my tablet doesn't fall. The Israeli embassy. The Israeli embassy, which absolutely angered, and rightfully so, every single Muslim who saw it, because that is Muslim land, and to shake hands with people who've occupied it is a slap in the face of every victim there. So may Allah open his eyes to his actions, because by standing there, he's standing as a Muslim leader who accepts this disgusting, abhorrent state.
Subhanallah.
Sorry,
bro, to be honest with you,
This is his background.
Is there even any need to move to the majestic Quran? Because
Yes, there is. Because look at it. He's normalized relationships with the disbelievers. He's
so basically, what you're saying is the majestic
He's normalizing occupation, and
that's fine.
This is the cherry on the cake.
I understand.
Because he's going to try and pervert the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So in a way, what you're
Triple threat.
saying, is that the majestic Quran actually, if you can understand all these other actions that happened previously, you can probably see how it fits in even with those the issue to do with the what do they call it, the beliefs, interfaith
dialogue, yeah.
you know, and to be honest with you, before we get onto the majestic Quran, you know, I've been there. I've had an audience with Dr. Musharraf, and I think even Rash was there when basically he was giving a speech, and you know, he dropped a bomb, and this bomb even his own supporters couldn't really back him up at the time, right? Basically, he was there and he goes, look, he said the Union Jack, the English flag. He said it's part of my iman.
Astaghfirullah.
Bro, who says that? And you know, subhanAllah, there was an uproar. It went crazy. And you know what? Afterwards, even when we were speaking to his hardcore supporters on other issues, they were like, no, listen, you probably but this issue, they went shy, they went quiet, because how can one say this? But okay, let's move on a bit. Just majestic Quran, brother.
I'm from Nottingham, and to give you a bit of background, Dr. Musharraf has done some amazing community work in Nottingham. So the reason why he's got a very, very good reputation is because, and he continues to do good work. The Karimiyya Institute continue to help Syrian refugees. They continue to be involved in projects. They do lots of good projects where Muslims get together, be it for sisters, you know, whether it's health projects. So he's actually involved in a lot of good work. So to completely disregard all of that would be unfair.
I like that. I like this. Yeah. You got to do this. I think that, like you said, sometimes, you know, we can always point out the bad elements, but like you said,
you have to point out the good things.
You have to be fair.
Exactly. So he's done lots of good work. So, and he's built that credibility.
Alhamdulillah.
Exactly. But this was the reason for painting the framework. Was the framework is important because, like when someone kind of errs once and then apologizes, you give them the benefit of the doubt. That's what we as Muslims should be doing.
100%.
But actually, there are too many problematic elements. After all of that good work that's been done, you mentioned the Union Jack issue. You mentioned or the visit to Jerusalem. To Al-Quds. You mentioned those things. But, you know, you say go back to the Quran. You know, this issue, initially, like I said, it exploded on social media, mainly. And to be fair, there was some things in social media that was even put that were, you know, there was fake things being put out there. So the people who were supporting him were able to say, well, I think there was like an agenda or an itinerary or something posted saying this is where Dr. Musharraf was lambasted by his own people, and he agreed, he apologized, and things like that, and it was shared around. And later it was found that actually someone had made, even though some of that actually happened, but whoever put it together almost, it seemed, out of spite.
Bro, I saw a video.
So that came later. Okay. So again, because there's all of this stuff going on, a part of me was questioning that, okay, I know about these things that have previously come about, and that's why I have serious reservations about this person. Even knowing all the good work that he's done, I had serious reservations. But then most recently I thought, okay, let's do a little bit more research. Let's actually look not just at documents that have been passed around, which are like, you know, almost someone has said this is the translation that Dr. Musharraf in the majestic Quran has put, and therefore this is where it's wrong. I said, actually, put that aside. Let's look at the majestic Quran in its book form. Just make sure there's no chance that someone has just tried to kind of use their agenda to attack him.
Could be.
Okay, so then you look at the Quran itself, and then you look at the translation that Dr. Musharraf gives, and actually it's very, very, very problematic. It's outright. You know, he said, I think he came out in his apology video going that there is no kufr in this. But you know what? People need to look at this because there are examples. First and foremost, the translations themselves we'll talk about are incorrect. And secondly, for some reason, until recently, people haven't been referring to some of the headings given to some of the sections. So the translations, so there's the ayah where Allah is telling us that He has perfected our deen, and He's telling that Islam is the only correct path Islam is the only correct path. Dr.
Today I have perfected your deen, and I have perfected your deen, and I've chosen Islam
as the correct way. So he has translated that without putting the word Islam in there as just being a way that is submitting to Allah. All of a sudden, what does that do? That normalizes other religions without saying that Islam is the correct path.
But I've never heard that before. That's crazy.
So that's the first that's one translation. That's one area. Then in another place where it's talking about, that Allah knows that there are some things that we might think is bad but is good for us, and there's other things that we might think is good that is bad for us.
Yes.
And it's talking about like fighting in the way of Allah.
That's right.
First and foremost, he makes it look like the heading is the lesser of the two evils. So what is he referring to? He's basically saying jihad is an evil. Isn't that the natural if you think about it, he's saying the heading is the lesser of the two evils, and then it's talking about something that you may dislike. You may dislike fighting, but Allah has ordained it upon you. And that's the other translation issue, because where it says fighting has been ordained upon you, he mistranslated that as fighting is allowed. That's totally different. To say fighting is allowed is totally different to saying fighting is ordained on you. And you can give...
No, to be honest, right? The command of fasting in Ramadan, it was fasting has been ordained. Kutiba, yeah. It's been enjoined on you. You have to do it. Yeah. It's the same way the command of fighting came. It was commanded. You don't say, I'll fast. It's been enjoined. I'm allowed to fast.
And what would be odd is, where kutiba,
yeah.
If you went and found the section of the fasting, would it say that fasting has been made allowed for you, or would it be fasting is ordained for you? Even in his own.
Exactly. And these are just some areas, yeah? And look, we're not scholars.
No.
So if someone wants to come along and refute and say, no, this is what it means and this is why, go and look at the traditional the translations of all of those things. Look at them and compare them. It's very, very clear. And then, put the translation aside and then compare it to some of these other things. The reason why the visit to Jerusalem is linked to this, and the reason why some of the activities that are being done by Karimia is linked to this, is to do with interfaith dialogue.
Yes.
Interfaith dialogue. So if you don't know about that background, you look at the translation, you go, maybe that's just a slip, it's a mistake. But actually you look at, so the two things fit together really conveniently. It's like, I need to promote interfaith, I need to promote that other religions are okay. Therefore, I will do an interpretation or a translation of the Quran that takes those very verses that he's seeing as problematic in the other translation and retranslate them so interfaith all of a sudden becomes completely permissible. And this is not to say we don't speak to people of other religions, but interfaith today is not that. The interfaith movement we see today is more about bringing other religions on the same level as Islam. It's not about talking to non-Muslims.
Degrading Islam to go on to their levels.
Exactly.
Because you can't move them up.
And you know how you can link this? You can link this full circle back to your sports people and things. When we look at the sports people, they're not politicians. Yeah, they're not politicians. They're normal people in society. They've had celebrity status. They're not going to profess to be an expert in Islam. Yeah. However, these people, and you like your bin Bayyahs of the world, they have been involved in politics for a long time. If you look at bin Bayyah's history, especially, forget Hamza Yusuf and Dr. Musharraf for a second, bin Bayyah's history is that he was involved in politics. So when he says something Islamic and you go, maybe it's political naivety. No, you know politics, you know Islam, so you're in a field where you should be able to give correct guidance. Whereas the football player, you can almost say, look, maybe he does, most people know about Putin, so you could argue that he should have known better, but you can still say that boxer or that football player, maybe he's not too aware politically, fine, give him the benefit of the doubt. These people involved in these type of projects, they know the political situation, they know Islam, they have a level of responsibility, and if they can justify their actions, then let them come forward. We invite them to come on here and put their angle across.
MashaAllah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I'd say that also.
If I'm wrong, I'm happy to be
corrected.
The
mistakes they're making. I'll give you the example, right? When he says other than submission and commitment. Who is he to make that suggestion? Is he saying that commitment is going to be accepted? Because that's the word. To Allah, it will never be accepted. So if you choose any other deen but Islam, it will never be accepted.
Yeah.
But now he's saying submission and commitment. You could be committed to Christianity. You could be committed to Judaism. But that's the point, isn't it? But you were talking about bin Bayyah. Him and Hamza Yusuf, they hosted Qadianis. Now on a Aqidah level, every Muslim is required, not like a scholar is required to know the finality of the Prophet ﷺ. He is the last messenger to be sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to know this. They were included them in their forum of peace. They said, these are our brothers.
Subhanallah. Okay.
Forget about on a political level. This is how degraded these people are.
This is where it gets to this level where you keep making excuses for your brother, and we should make excuses.
But
for our
I was going to one thing I was going to say, right? You mentioned about the scholars.
Very quickly, because I know you guys are like raging bulls at the moment. I'm trying to calm you down. You know what I'm saying, right?
The random point. It said, what the last thing was? Religious. So it mentioned spiritual and scholars. But when it said scholars, the point it was making was to have that authority. So they're doing this good work. They were dealing with marriage. They were dealing all that, and that's how they get authority.
That's how you get the authority.
And like the Prophet ﷺ said, to tell 1,000 lies, the jinns tell one truth. You have to bring them in. You have to have that sweet to bring the people in to fool them, because this is a deception.
Yes, of course.
And that's the whole point. And that's why they have this authority. They adorn these garb, as in their clothes, and then they say all this kind of stuff. I'm not saying, you shouldn't wear these clothes, but it's to get that legitimacy. And that's why they say scholars, and that's why they say, where have you studied, where have you done that? We have to know these things by definition.
No, but that's the thing is, obviously, we know that, I don't want to go off the topic, but we know that even some of the things that they say is that if you don't fit a certain appearance, who are you to even speak about Islam, right? Anyway, Rash, before you go off on one,
No, sorry.
So what I want to do is, obviously, we've given examples of people maybe who shouldn't be Islamic role models from a scholarly point of view. We're getting close to the end of the podcast. What qualities, do we have any examples today of scholars that we should aspire to? What are some of the, you guys already mentioned the qualities that scholars should have, but are there scholars today that are pushing the ideas that are correct?
Yeah, definitely. The situation is positive, it's getting better. The reason, maybe just to kind of think, the reason why we're agitated is, when you read some of these translations, it's agitating.
Bro, I think everyone's appreciated that, how agitated
but if you think about it, we don't speak Arabic. So where we get our Quran from is from the translation, isn't it? So all of a sudden, if those translations that are put in front of us and then are kind of spread around the whole of your communities, that creates
Inshallah,
difficulty.
we'll try to get Dr. Musharraf on if you want.
Inshallah,
like Rash.
Inshallah. So in terms of good scholars, firstly, the sad side of it is, especially in the Middle Eastern places, there are many good scholars that speak the haqq, but unfortunately, many of them are in prisons.
And that's one of the points, is they're in prisons. Secondly, are the scholars on the haqq, which there are millions, would they be given airtime?
No.
Would they be on Al Jazeera?
But this is why scholars in the Western world are so important. This is why we need, and this is it. It's not about it might have come across a little bit about we're bashing some of the scholars, but actually we're in desperate need of scholars today.
Yes.
And that's why they play a big role in the Western world, is because at least they can get their voices heard. There they can get their voices heard. So even recently, there's like Sheikh Azra Rashid. We've been hearing quite a lot from him, because whilst he has, he's got like a Braillery background, but he is bringing things and ideas to the table that Muslims need to speak about. He's come on the scene and he's shaken up the scene, and alhamdulillah, people are talking about the right things. So there are scholars that are speaking about the correct things. There are scholars that are exposing. So when this, even there, I won't go into too much more names, but even when Sheikh Hamza Yusuf said some of these things, there were other scholars that came out and refuted him. So alhamdulillah, that's good. Yes. We need that. There were several of them. So I think this is really important. And the two examples to give quickly is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what did he do? He prayed for one of the two Umars to become Muslim. And how this is linked is that those people, it's important to have people of influence in society in order to instigate change. Yeah, it's very important. So he recognized that we needed we needed someone who could come into the Islamic fold, who was an influencer in society. So that's why scholars are really, really important. And the second example we can talk about another time is the example of Musab ibn Umair. Again, utilizing someone who had eloquent speech and the haqq, and then seeing the work that he did in Medina in order to get Islam to progress to the level they did.
Before Ishi, I'm going to have to cut you off there. What I would say is that I've had a signal from our cameraman that we have to sort of wrap up because I think of technical issues. Okay. So let's have a bit of a summary, some points to take away. The topic was about role models. We spoke about what Islamic role models should be. We also actually spoke about the scholars, and the important thing is that there should be like a call to action. It's not just the responsibility of the scholars. If we are on a level where we don't try to elevate ourselves, right, then the scholars are going to stay at the same level as well, and you know what I'm trying to say. So there's our accountability to them should be there, and our reminders should be there. If we remind them, if we account them, this will inshallah ta'ala be beneficial for us and also be beneficial for them. But if you have a quick round table type of summary,
I think the first thing is to increase your own knowledge and find out what like for example, what a good scholar is. What does Islam ask us? So when that time does come, we can account them. I was going to give a few examples on that, but I guess we're short on time.
Yeah, we're short on time. But what about role models? We spoke about scholars. Yeah. Scholars are not the only role models.
Of course not.
They are they are like a major part of role models.
I was listening to a talk the other day, and it was about Imran Khan, and he speaks a lot about Islam. And this scholar got very, very agitated, and because the comparison was made about people like Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala an. And he said, this is a man who I don't want my name to be mentioned because he's at such a high level. He never did a U-turn, even when times got difficult. But he had that knowledge to make that correction. You do not mention. And that's what we learn about these heroes. You look at the Sahaba. First you start with the Prophet ﷺ, then you see the people that surrounded him. Every Sahaba you look at, let me tell you, you might not be the strongest, but you could be the wisest. You could be the strongest, use that strength for good.
Okay.
Everyone has their own characteristics, and the Sahaba have them. Okay. Just like our scholars. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. I
know you're getting emotional. That's why I'm trying to.
My point is quite simple.
Press the brakes.
My point is quite simple and short. We're not going to change the fact that Muslims are going to aspire to the likes of Mohammed, Salah, and Paul Pogba. We're not going to change this because the basis for change has to be society. And society until the.
But even if they look, let's make it clear. If they're looking up to them as footballers, there's no problem.
No problem. No. What I'm saying is they're even looking up to them as Muslim role models.
Yeah.
When you can't change that without changing the dominant ideology. So that's not going to change. But what we can do is teach our children and our families and our friends about the Islam in terms of who our real role models of the past were, so that our children at least know about the Sahaba, at least know about those great scholars, know about the great scientists that Islam bred, that were able to demonstrate to the world that under Islam, it's not like this military state where people cannot progress in any field. In fact, under Islam, every field progressed. So I think this is what we need to pass on to people.
SubhanAllah, the last points you guys have made are loaded in themselves on many podcasts, and obviously for our listeners and for those viewing, normally I give a bit of a speech at the end. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to say is that inshallah, take away the points that we've spoken about, about role models. They're very important, especially for the new generation. We should counter this and not be, we should be part of the solution, not part of the problem. I'd like to say Jazakallah khair for my co-host Rash, and our guests as usual. But the Ishti is on fire today, and I'm gonna have to get some water and extinguish the fire. But we're definitely gonna get you back on,
inshallah.
Soon. Because there's so much to speak about. So Jazakallah khair to you guys, Jazakallah khair for everyone listening and watching at home, and inshallah ta'ala we'll see you on the next podcast. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Thanks for watching that video. For more exclusive videos, please like, share and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget you can listen to some of our shows wherever you are, because we're also available on all popular podcast platforms. And for more Voice of the Ummah content, make sure you check out the links to all of our social media platforms in the description below.